So another Patreon exclusive video, this time about the N3 sequencer from docB. This sequencer was once available in the XOR collection. It was called neg, and it's an 8-channel gate sequencer, a sort of a Euclidean sequencer, but with a few interesting twists. So let's start by having a look at the basic functions. So we have a global clock input. I will use in this case multiplied by 2 clock. Right, and you can see already we are moving, but we are moving really slowly. And that's because all in all, of course, we have 360 degrees and each clock will move by default only 1 degree. But we can change this. So for example, here we have the degrees. If I change this to 72 and I will reset it, now we have 5 points. So it will jump between 5 different steps. Right, 360 divided by 5 is 72. If I want 16 steps, I have to change this to 22.5. Right, again, reset this, and now we have 16 points, so 360 divided by 16 is 22.5. Now, by the way, I have here a few presets that I saved. You see 12 steps, 32 steps, 4 steps, 8 steps, and so on and so forth. I will include them also with the patches if you want to download them and use them instead of calculating this all the time. But now I will activate the first sequence, so we will stay with 16 steps. Right, in this case, I will use the trigger output that we see here. This will trigger or gate tremor 2, the kick section of tremor 2. Right, for now we have just 2 hits, but also this we can change by changing the number of points on the grid. So if, for example, this is with the vertices here, if I change this to 4, right now we have 4 points, basically the 16 steps are divided by 4. Right, we can also do something interesting where it's starting to get Euclidean to change this to 7. Right, so now we have 16 steps, and in these 16 steps we have 7 hits. I will add some delay. I have here Prince of Perception just for some texture. Right, let's use another sequence. I will turn it on, and this will trigger the noise section for some hi-hats. Right, and in this case, let's go with 12 points. So we have another sequence within these 16 points. I have here also a bass. I will use another channel. This is a kick call from Befaco with some chorus, some distortion. So this will trigger kick all, and let's go with 10 points, let's say. Right, so again, we divided this circle to 16 different points, and within these points we can create different sequences with different number of points within the 16. Here I have another sequence just for fun, slips sequencing the FM operator. Really simple, but just to add again some texture, I just quickly reset everything so it all runs together. Let's have a look now at the rotation and skew. I have here 3 FM operators. Each of them is tuned to a different note. The first one by default is C. Then we have here E flat, and then we have G. Right now, for now, they are playing all the same rhythm. You can see I have here 4 points for the 3 sequences, right? So they are just basically playing a chord at the same time. Right? But now we can start rotating these points, these sequences on the grid. So for example, here we have the rotation controls, right? So I can start rotating the second sequence here. Right, and get all sorts of different rhythms, right? I can also skew the shapes With the skew control, maybe I will do this for the third channel. I will just have just it on so we see exactly what's going on. Right here we have the skew controls. And look what happens here. We start deforming this shape. Right? And we get all sorts of interesting rhythms. Of course, all of these have also CV inputs, so I can slowly drift the first channel by modulating its rotation, right, with a slow LFO that I have here. It's a unipolar LFO that I can use to modulate the rotation. Again, if I just turn it on, you can see it's moving. And it will always drift in and out with the other channels. Right, I have here another example, right, again, modulating the skew, modulating the rotation. You can see all the different shapes here on the grid. Right, in this case, it's sequencing two VCOs. Basically, I'm using the triggers to trigger a new random note. Right, so the notes will change in all sorts of different ways. This is going through two bandpass filters. Right, just adding movement. And here, just for fun, I have a bass drone with a classic VCO from Sergey XT going through a filter. No need for more than this. I want to quickly show you what the exact button does. Right, I have here a sequence with kick all. Right, for now, how things are set up, each point is exactly on one of the divisions of the rotations. Right, it will meet the points that we set through the degrees here exactly on point. Right, but if I add another point, another vertices, for example, to make this 5, right now, only the first point is actually exactly on the rotation, right? So if exact is off, just like it is now, right, nothing will change, there is no difference. But if I turn this on, it will output triggers that are only exactly on the rotation, again, according to the degrees you set, right? So you see just the first one now is triggering kick all. If I turn this back to 4, right now, again, each point is exactly in the division of the degrees, so we get all of the triggers. But if I rotate this just a little bit, right, already we get nothing, because again, now I move them and they are not anymore exactly on the points. So if you don't get any triggers and you don't understand why, make sure exact mode is off. And if you want to modulate things but still stay the same at some sort of a rhythmic quantization, make sure exact is on. So again, we have 8 channels we can use, but we can also utilize polyphony. Here we have polyphonic outputs. Right, so here I have a voice. My voice here is an FM voice with 2 FM operators. One is modulating the other. I also have here the random module generating pitch. Right, so random pitch changes. So I will use the polyphonic gate output in this case to gate this voice. Right, for now we have just one channel on, so we still get just one voice. But if I turn on the second channel, for example, now we have a polyphony of 2. Right, so basically this setup is now multiplied or duplicated by 2. And as you can see, I have here quite a long release and decay. And the voices will decay out without cutting each other, because again, we have 2 voices. Right, I can turn on another one. Now we have 3, 4, right, another one, And here I have another channel with some modulation with two LFOs, one modulating the skew, one modulating the rotation. You can see this quite clearly here on this grid. Right, so now we have polyphony. Instead of using each channel by itself with a similar setup, I can just use polyphony, and then now all of this setup is basically duplicated by 6 because we have 6 channels, 6 voices, and each voice gets its own channel, so it gets its own, it can release and decay fully, basically. Right, now we have here, if you can see this here, we have 3 outputs for each channel and also for the polyphonic channels. We have gate, clock, and triggers. Now, gates and triggers are different. Triggers are shorter than the gates, but the clock, I'm not so sure why it's there, because it will basically output more or less the same signal as the gate. So you can either choose gate or you can choose clock. I guess clock depends on the clock that's coming in here, so you can use something with pulse width modulation and modulate also the pulse width, but basically more or less it will output the same signal. Another fun use of a sequencer like this is to drive other sequencers. You can use the individual channels, again, just to drive various sequencers, or also here we can use polyphony with something like the ADDR sequencer. The ADDR sequencer is polyphonic, which means that if we are using a polyphonic clock, it will run through the steps at different rates according to the different channels. So even though we have just 8 steps, we can still trigger them or between them or through them at different rates. The voice itself I have here is the VCO going through a low pass filter. Right, so if I use this, for example, I will use the polyphony, of course. Right now we have just 2 triggers. So you can see it's advancing according to the triggers, but if I have here another channel with 3 points, right, you can see we have now 2 lights here. One will run with the 2 triggers, one will run with the 3 triggers in this case. Right, and again we have polyphony of 2 voices. I can add another one. And another one just for fun. So I have here 2, 3, 5, and 6. Right, so now basically we have sort of 4 ADDR sequencers running at different rates, because again I'm using the triggers from the N3 to trigger the ADDR. Right, and again, of course, you can use also the individual outputs to trigger individual sequencers. But now that I have a polyphonic pitch information, I can use the bass module from Sively to extract the bass notes from this, which is quite cool. I have here a sub bass with 1 VCO and another VCO is the higher harmonics. I'm going through a filter and some chorus just for fun. Listen to this, this is so nice. Right, and that's it. I hope you will go and explore this sequencer. Thank you again so much for your support. Cheers.